Should you use caffeine before working out? Well, in today's video, we're gonna talk about the various sources of caffeine, why you should use caffeine, maybe why you shouldn't, and then we're also gonna discuss some other things to take into consideration so you can make the greatest decision for you in your fitness journey. Welcome to Only the Greatest. My name is Philip. I'm a personal trainer and the owner at Otg Fitness, a personal training gym based in Houston, Texas. And it's our goal here to keep fitness simple, fun, and most importantly, effective. In today's video, we're talking all about caffeine, and we're gonna get started with a few sources of caffeine that you may or may not already have in your daily life. So when it comes to sources of caffeine, I kind of like to break things down into two different categories. First, we have the things that we know have caffeine in them, especially as fitness people, right? And then we have this other category of items that we don't necessarily think of as caffeine containing, but they do have caffeine in them. Let's start with a few things that you may not even realize have caffeine in them. And I'll say this to you even before we get into it. There are a lot of items that could be on this list. So maybe a quick Google search, you might find even more, but these are common things that you might be having on a regular basis and that a lot of people are probably having. So the first one that we're gonna talk about is chocolate. Believe it or not, chocolate does have a small amount of caffeine in it. Even though it's not a whole lot, it's still enough that you need to take it into consideration. Something that you're hopefully not having very much of, especially if you're on any type of serious weight loss journey or just overall fitness and health, is gonna be soda. All sodas, minus ones that specifically say 0 caffeine, do have some caffeine in them. So make sure you're taking that into account if you're having soda. The last one is gonna be tea. There's all types of teas out there. There's black teas, there's green teas, there's breakfast teas, there's dinner teas, there's all types of tea out there. They have various levels of caffeine in them. So if you're drinking tea on a regular basis, do make sure that you're taking that into account for your total caffeine intake for the day. And now for some more common sources that you might think of as caffeine containing. The first is gonna be coffee, whether it's you're picking up from Starbucks or you're making it at home. The biggest thing to think about here is what size coffee are you getting? Are you getting a small, like a tall from Starbucks? Or are you going for that venti size, the biggest thing they have with extra pumps in it? Make sure you're taking that caffeine total into account. The next one is gonna be energy drinks. This is one that has gotten super popular recently. You also need to understand that some energy drinks have more caffeine than others. On the low end, I've seen as low as 50 to 100 milligrams. On the high end, 300 milligrams of caffeine in one energy drink. So make sure you know how much you're taking in each time you get an energy drink. The last one, pre-workouts. Another one you need to be very careful of. An extra thing to be cautious of with pre-workouts is the labeling of the caffeine. There are various types of caffeine out there, so make sure that when you're buying a pre-workout, you're not just looking for the word caffeine or caffeine anhydrous, which is the line item that you're gonna see on most pre-workouts. That's just basically caffeine that's made in a lab to mimic regular caffeine, but there are other types as well. So you need to make sure you're taking all of those different types into account and adding them up to get a total amount of caffeine inside of that entire pre-workout. The pros, the reason you would want to use caffeine before you work out. And let's be honest, you probably already know the answer. The increase of energy, the increase of mood. You feel so much better when you have caffeine. Think about when you really want some coffee, you go into Starbucks, you go through the drive-thru, you take that first sip and it's like, I just feel so much better. It's the same thing when you're going to the gym. If you have some caffeine before, not only are you gonna have more energy, you're gonna feel better, and there are studies showing that an increase in performance is real, not only in strength, but endurance also. So if you want to feel better, you want to feel stronger, have more endurance, and just more overall energy, caffeine is something that you probably should consider before you go to the gym. So before we get into the downsides, comment below, let us know your favorite source of caffeine. The cons. caffeine can interfere with sleep. It can cause insomnia, right? If you work out a little later in the day, closer to bedtime, might not be the best thing for you. Another reason that it might not be is if you have some slight anxiety, you're an anxious person, caffeine can heighten that. It can take it to another level. So know that about yourself and either say no to caffeine or really limit it. Another downside to caffeine is you become dependent on it. For now, let's say you need 200 milligrams of caffeine, or you want 200 milligrams of caffeine. That's what makes you feel good. It makes you perform good. Well, next thing you know, you need 250, and then you need 300, and then you need more. And that dependency can be a very negative thing. So another thing you can consider is cycling your caffeine, taking time off. But then the downside becomes the withdrawal symptoms. If you're used to getting in X amount of caffeine every day and you just cut it out, now I'm getting headaches, I'm not feeling good, I'm irritable, my mood's not nearly as good as it usually is. So these are all things that you need to take into account before you decide if you're gonna use caffeine before you work out. Some other considerations, your total dosage. I was looking around online and I found a study that talked about how much caffeine it takes to actually become effective. And it seems to be about 2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So me, I weigh 200 pounds. That's about 90 kilograms, which means I need about 180 milligrams of caffeine to be effective. So take your own weight into consideration there, do that calculation, and maybe that'd be a good place for you to start. The next thing you want to consider is the total recommended daily allowance. Currently, it's about 400 milligrams, or there's another one that I found that said 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight for your total amount in a day, which for me at 200 pounds or about 90 kilograms is gonna be 450 milligrams at the total amount for the day is gonna be the most that you want to take in. So once you do that quick calculation, now take into account how much caffeine you use historically. Are you already at the top of that RDA? Are you over that? Well, you don't want to be adding in more before you work out if you're already at the top end of the amount that you should have. And that kind of leads into my next point, which is cycling. I know I talked about this a little bit earlier, but if you're already at the top end of that, it may be a good time for you to take a total break from caffeine for a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. There's lots of ways to cycle caffeine. You can do it daily. You have a few days in a row where you take a pre-workout or take an energy drink, and then for a day or two, you don't. Something that I did in the past with pre-workout is I would buy a tub of pre-workout, use it, and then force myself to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks before buying another tub of caffeine. So there's multiple ways to cycle on and off caffeine to avoid that dependency. Pick your poison, whichever one is best for you. If you're gonna use caffeine, I would recommend every once in a while taking a small break. So as you can see, there's lots to consider here when making this decision. But at the end of the day, it probably won't hurt to give caffeine a shot if you feel like you need it and you think it's gonna help. The most important thing is stay within the recommended daily allowance and don't take caffeine too close to bed. Little disclaimer that I always throw in when talking about any form of supplements is please establish some type of routine and get at least a minimal amount of results before you introduce supplements, even caffeine, because you want to prove to yourself that you don't need this external thing to get results. You can't get results without it. Caffeine is just a bonus to help get you to the next level. Guys, if you loved this video and you like the information that we're bringing, please like it, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you next time.